So today I'm going to talk about my issues with public art, specifically how developers get around the 2% rule for all developments that need to go and be dedicated to public art.
If you meet me, I'm gonna show you some of the dopest people in the world.
I'm gonna tell my son, man, a man is what he makes in his society. So you gotta go out there and you gotta dig oceans. You gotta build mountains and paint 16 chapels and create the next innovation and inspire everyone that you meet.
Give you that Holyfield, hitting like Holyfield, mixed with some golden.
I'm going to be reading some of this straight off of ChatGPT. It was a ring the alarm situation to me after I posted the 2% rule and a good friend made a comment that said, you know what? A lot of developers get around this even by just putting a placard up and saying that's the public art. I already knew that some of the public art is not actually public or is only accessible by going into these places, which may be like a nuclear plant, which may be like an apartment complex, which may be a place that is not always really accessible to the public. I also read into the ideas of, only about 20% of the budget goes to the actual artist, and there's no fees that the artist gets back besides that, but they could sell merch. But these long-standing art pieces that are meant to be there, at least a majority of these art pieces for the test of time. And they throw this number about 25 years to 50 years that something's going to last. If the state or if the government wants us to make this public art that is supposed to last for so long, why is there only a one-off fee? But here I go. I'm going to read into how developers get around the 2% rule. Yes, there are instances where developers have attempted to circumvent the 2% for public art rule, often through legal loopholes, negotiation with city officials, or by finding alternative ways to meet the requirement without actually commissioning new art. Here are a few examples. Alternative contributions. Some developers negotiate with city officials to contribute the 2% fee directly to a city's public art fund rather than commissioning new public art. So rather than giving the 2% fee to new public art, the developers will give it back to the state or give it to the state's art program. I've heard they can also give it to an organization so they can make art on their own time, but it doesn't go to public art. And public art is so monumental because it creates monuments that we can always remember and enjoy as a community. This allows the city to use the funds for art in other locations or projects, which might not align with the original intent of the rule to have art directly integrated into the development. Art substitutions. In some cases, developers have proposed using existing art or repurposing art from other locations to fulfill the 2% requirement. This approach can sometimes be accepted if the art is deemed significant enough, though it may dilute the intention of commissioning new site-specific works. Another way around it, minimal art installations. Some developers fill the requirement by commissioning very minimal or inexpensive art installations that technically meet legal definition of public art, but don't contribute significantly to the aesthetic or value of the development. This could include things as simple as plaques, small sculptures, or basic murals that satisfy the 2% rule. Another, legal challenges and waivers. A lot of times, developers will just pay the fee to not do it. There have been instances where developers challenge the 2% rule in court or seek waivers, arguing that the rule imposes an undue burden on their projects. Although not always successful, these challenges can lead to the weakening of the rule in certain jurisdictions. And last but not least, art in public spaces. Some developers place the required art in areas that are technically public but not easily accessible or visible to the general public, such as inside a lobby that is open to the public during business hours, such as Inside a Lobby, which is open to the public during business hours, but when the business is closed, it is not accessible. This can technically fulfill the requirement without engaging the public. I think that the main issue here is that there is profit over people. If a developer can do good business and find a way to not actually invest in public art, then they'll do that good business and they'll find a way to not invest in public art. And this rule was made because public art is influential. And it seems like they're going against the nature of the rule that public art is good for business. Public art is good for communities. If you're coming into a location, the least that you could do is create something that people can enjoy, that can create civil engagement, that can create a conversation, and that people can relate to. We don't just want businesses to come into our communities and not give something back. If it's not social, it needs to be artistic. If it's not artistic, it needs to be financial, but there needs to be some sort of investment into communities if you're coming into them and you're going to benefit financially. My conclusion with this, and the help of a good friend, Dinah, she runs a museum in Oceanside. Black woman that runs a museum. Awesome. We need to hold government, we need to hold the state, we need to hold the nation, we need to hold developers accountable for these 2% rules. There needs to be new jurisdictions and new laws that definitely do not allow developers and people that are in power, the executives, these boardrooms, to go around these 2% rules. We need public art, whether it's like an Eiffel Tower, whether it is the Great Wall of China. We need public art because it's influential and we live within communities. So we need something that represents those communities, not just square buildings. And sometimes it needs to be bigger than a mural. So we need to challenge government, we need to challenge developers to put more into public art as they put more into our communities. So those are my issues with public art. Join me and others in holding developers accountable to the 2% rule and demanding that public art is awesome. Not just this abstract, weird type of thing, but it's something that you could do. Another issue that I have with public art is that sometimes when you get, surveys from the community, it's only people that can come to those surveys. Maybe you need to expand that, make it accessible online. But there's tons of people, especially people that are living on the margins, that need to be home, people that don't have accessibility or mobility, that want to be able to participate and give feedback for the public art that's going to be in their communities. Even the children that are there, all the voices need to be heard when it comes to public art. And that's just going to make public art better. Sometimes. Sometimes the artist already knows. Sometimes the artist has had experiences and other ideas might dilute their final creation. So finding a balance with public art and what it means to a community and how it comes about has to be done lovingly, strategically, and in a timely manner. Not quick, but with the time that community moves in. All right, peace.
If you meet me, I'm gonna show you some of the dopest people in the world.
I'm gonna tell my son, man, a man is what he makes in this society. So you gotta go out there and you gotta dig oceans. You gotta build mountains and paint 16 chapels and create the next innovation and inspire everyone that you meet.
Give you that Holyfield, hitting like Holyfield, mixed with some golden.